ACCC is now a very interesting player in the Apple and Google versus Epic Games, and then the ACCC just itself, turning the heat up on Apple and Google. So, we wanted to cover this because it's going to cover a few different things around gaming, really. And the reality is, we're a gaming podcast that doesn't cover the number one gaming platform in the world, which is mobile gaming.
And Indigo, can I ask what the ACCC is?
Yes, and I should say people should call it the ACCC. I do see a lot of people online saying the ACCC. So it's the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. There is one in England, and there's one that's sort of similar, but it got depowered under Trump in the US. But essentially, it's a government body, a regulatory body that looks at competition within Australia. And really, the ACCC is the reason why Australia, in my estimation, has the most pro-consumer laws in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to, and I know that you covered this in your notes, Swinny, just around Steam, and the policies around Steam and refunding on Steam really sort of kickstarted in Australia. Steam and Valve in general like to try to simplify things. They don't like having different policies in different countries. And because of the way that Australia worked with its laws, even if you bought a digital game that's defective, you have to have a right to refund it. And they've fined, Valve in the past and Sony in the past for mistakes in this space, indiscretions in this space. So Steam actually changed their whole policy on their whole store to make it so that there's a 2-hour window where you can return a game, like 2 weeks and 2 hours. And that seemed to satisfy the ACCC as well. So the ACCC, I'm a big fan of them in general. Through my work, we deal with them to some degree. And there's often thought where I work around interpretations of what the ACCC will look at certain things. So it's certainly a body that does have an impact in Australia, where people do actually think of the consumer, think of competition, think of anti-competitive behavior, monopoly behavior, things like that. So there was a report into digital products, digital platforms. It's been going on for 5 years now, and they had their second report come out, and it was quite scathing and quite dramatic, really, for Apple and Google. And the crux of it really is that they view generally the fact that Apple, especially probably Apple more so than Google, can force people to have default apps, force people to only use their app platform, their app store, as in general anti-competitive. And I think the one that's the most interesting is they're pretty much dead set against the fact that once you have an app on your phone and it's there, that you have to only use, say Apple's mechanisms to buy in-game currency or to trade inside of the app. So that's probably the biggest thing that they're damning of. So much so that they are, it's tipped to, and, the Australian Financial Review is very, very good newspaper, very similar to the Wall Street Journal in America or the Times in England. They are tipped to say that the ACCC will be joining Epic Games in the federal lawsuit in Australia that Epic has against Apple and Google, which is, and they'll be joining the lawsuit as a witness for Epic Games, which is insane if that happens. That will
huge,
be huge. And I think we covered it. We've covered it I think 4 times, this battle between pretty much Apple versus Epic Games. And, I sort of said Australia is very pro-consumer. I thought it was a really smart move to sue in Australia because especially the forcing people to use Apple to buy in-game currency just doesn't compute in Australian law. There's so many examples of where these things have been shut down in Australia, where people have tried to do things like that. The banks have
people
tried to
should be given a choice where they want to blow and waste all their money.
Yeah, where the whales can blow. Yeah, they want 20% off on their virtual currency. God damn it, they entitled.
God damn it, we got to give them option to waste their money in this country.
Now, and I've gone on a long rant, but the last thing I just wanted to throw in there was, and we didn't cover it because it didn't impact us, and it's not gaming specifically related, but there was a lot of pressure from the Australian government on essentially, Google and Facebook predominantly, how they were using news and Australian news, and were they paying for news or were they not? And then as a result of that, you saw Facebook turn off hundreds of thousands of Australian pages
That was nuts.
within a split second. And it actually it was meant to only be news, like pages. So, things like Sydney Morning Herald, which is a big newspaper in Australia, they had their whole, news component on Facebook shut down. So they weren't distributing any news on Facebook after that decision by Facebook, unilateral decision by Facebook. But actually also they shut down emergency services, like government agencies, health providers. It was insane.
In the middle of a pandemic.
In the middle of a pandemic, right? And with no warning at all. Like when I woke up, my Twitter feed was exploding with people. Like gaming news sites in Australia were shut down. And I just throw that in there because Apple and Google make a monster amount of profit on in-app purchases, and they will be more than willing to press the nuclear button on Australia because, again, Australia is a small little country in a huge world. We probably make up 1% of GDP worldwide. So Apple, in my determination, would be more than happy to lose Australia than create a concertina effect where Australia creates these type of laws and then other countries start to go, well, Australia's done that and look what's happened there and we should adopt it. And Europe would be the next domino to fall if something like that happened, especially that both of those companies aren't European companies. I just think, with this lawsuit and what the ACCC are saying, wow, like Apple and Google are willing to play as hard as possible. I'm saying this right now. I reckon Apple would be happy to pull the iPhone out of Australia. Like that's how serious they would take something like this. Now, the last thing I'll say, and I'll throw to you, Swinny.
That's a big call. Wow.
Like I said, it's 1%. It's 1% of their market. If this means there's a probability that they're going to have a dip of 10% in their profit long term because of this, like it's pretty easy decision. I mean, like that's ruthless business talk.
Plus,
that's
they know that people. I mean, I don't know what the consequences ultimately are, but they know that people can still do great imports anyway. So
yeah. So the last thing I just wanted to say is that the ACCC have shot a warning shot across the bow of Apple and Google. They haven't actually said they're going to join the case with Epic, and they've said that they're going to give it 12 months to determine what they do. So this is something that the ACCC does. They fire a warning shot, and then if people don't respond, they do something. So it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens in Australia. So Sweeney, what have I missed, and what do you want to add?
No, I just want to say that some of the, measures that they've actually suggested as part of this is, and I have a question about one of these, but that consumers can rate and review all apps, that consumers can change any pre-installed app. So you did mention some of that. That the data collected by Apple and Google as marketplace operators are ring-fenced from all their other operations so that they can't use that for competitive advantage. And the one that was most relevant, as you said, is that app developers can provide alternative payment options to consumers. So I didn't go read the full report, so that's more so just the summary from the ACCC's media release. But my question about that is that the consumers can rate review all apps. Is that because people can't currently rate review, let's say, Apple apps that are pre-installed?
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of apps you can't review.
I I get and I don't get that. I mean, do you need to Find My iPhone? Like, is that really a requirement? Do you need to be able to uninstall an app like that? I mean, it's to me, there needs to be some leeway in the sense that an operating system has core apps and functionality that is part of that operating system by design, and removing and forcing a manufacturer to remove those things doesn't make sense in all cases. So there must be some sort of leeway, right?
I imagine that I haven't read the actual full report, but I think that I imagine they would probably clarify that, where it's things like messaging services, things that are
what I mean. There's got to be
maybe
common sense
key
stuff like
to
that,
the actual operation of the app store or the device.
Yeah,
that you just cannot, there's no alternative, or you can't remove it. You're forced to use it and stuff like that.
And I mean, to be fair, I do have a lot of Apple stuff, but I'm not a big fan of Apple at the moment under Tim Cook's leadership. But they have made pretty good strides to do a lot of good things in this space. Like, I have uninstalled most of the default apps on my iPhone. I don't have Apple Maps on my iPhone. uninstalled.
Yeah, same.
Like there's a whole host of stuff that I've uninstalled.
Dude, oh my
so-
god! Like I don't want to get rant on about that, but that's one thing that I'm glad you can uninstall because
Yeah.
the number of times it's led me to a road that's completely closed off.
Yes,
It's a
I know,
dead end.
I know.
Like legit, it's happened to me 3 times, and then I went screw this, and I uninstalled the app.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's one of those things that works much better in America.
I'm sure they've improved it as well now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
so
back then it was
once you're in
horrible.
Australia, they just don't have people over here to complain about it. So
So the one thing I just wanted to kind of just bring up as well is, so you mentioned that, that you think Apple would rather pull out, of the Australian market, just obviously because of the market share, like we are nothing on the global market.
Yeah.
I know it's a different situation, but I remember a lot of people saying that that's probably what Steam was going to do when that whole refund thing was happening. And then that didn't happen. So I wonder if, do you think that, is there a precedent for that not being the case with that refund policy where it's like, okay, well, Steam didn't pull out, but yeah, I don't know.
my analysis wouldn't have been that Steam would have pulled out, and it's easy to say that because that didn't happen, right? But when you look at it, refunds are actually not a huge component of your business. And a lot of companies without legislation offer refunds because, so look at Amazon. Amazon are extremely generous with refunds, even above Australian standard law, right? So in the US, they offer better than Australian standard refund policies, right? So part of refunding is just better customer experience. So if someone on Steam buys something, refunds it within an hour because they're like, this is just a piece of shit, the trailer, the advertising is crap. In a way, like in the long run, it actually helps correct the market a bit, right? And I don't think from an economic point of view, Steam is necessarily losing more money. I mean, it's probably marginal. Whereas in-app purchases, it'd be like, I say it like this. If the ACCC said to Steam, you need to move your, pricing down so that, developers get 90% share. Like, yeah, maybe Steam would pull out, maybe, right? Because maybe it becomes a bit of a loophole for them and more developers try to list apps through Australia and all this other kind of crap, right? But refunds, I don't think that was necessarily going to blow up their business. But in-app purchases is one of the core parts of Apple's business. And when you look at it, it's like free money for them, legitimately. Like Fortnite, what are they producing, creating? Like it's literally using market power to generate money. They're generating 30%, like 30 cents in the dollar for practically doing nothing. And Epic Games is doing all the work in terms of getting people interested and getting them to want to buy V-Bucks or whatever they're called and use that in-game stuff. So, yeah, I wouldn't have thought that Steam would have ever pulled out because of the refund policy.
But you can also look at, I mean, on that topic with Epic Games, you can also look at they're clearly not happy with just the 70% that they get. They want more. They want the full 100%, right?
No. Well, I mean, to correct that, that's not true. I mean, Tim Sweeney has said he feels that 12% is a fair number, and that's what they set for the Epic Game Store on PC.
Okay.
So
no, I just think, do Apple really take such a huge cut that companies have a problem with it? Obviously,
of course they do,
because otherwise we wouldn't be having this chat, right?
The amount of
so clearly
money
they
that
think
passes,
it's too much that passes through Apple.
The amount of money that was passing through Fortnite, 100% they would have.
Yeah, of course they would. Yeah, you're talking about probably hundreds of millions, I'd assume, at that percentage.
Yeah, and like on this mic, there's been a lot of studies in game theory where if you have a scenario where you put 2 people in a room and then give one person the power to distribute, food, right? Now, the parameters are one person determines the split, the other person determines whether the deal is taken, and if they say no, no one gets food, right? Over different cultures, different people, everything, right? What it's shown is if person A, who determines the splits, takes 70% and gives 30% to the other person, most people take that deal, right? Anything less than that, if they take 80% and 20, they get 20, they go, oh no, forget about it, I'm not taking anything. But in general, most people, over time, the number is 70-30, right? It's a weird thing that happens, like with game theory. It's just human nature that, 50-50 is the fairest way, if you take a bit more. So there is some weird inherent thing in human nature where maybe in this case, the right number is more like 15% that Apple takes. They take a bit more, and developers are like, yeah, what else can we do? Yeah, we feel a bit ripped off, but it's not egregious, in this case. So I think there's a bit of an element of that. I do think there's going to be a downward trend in that space. There always is a downward trend in those kind of things.
Well, the only
cover
upward
that
trend
shortly,
is in eBay, where the fees are now close to 13%.
Well, they have more market power.
They just keep going up.
That's competition. That's what happens when you have a lack of
Or
competition.
lack thereof, yeah.
Exactly. Was there anything else you wanted to cover with this, Swinny?
No, look, I think that's... Obviously, this is pretty tenuous to gaming at this point, but it could become massive for gaming in the future. So that's... And we're Aussies. We really wanted to talk about the ACCC. So.
Yeah. And I love the ACCC. I think they're really good. They
I
don't
get a tattoo on my lower back.
But they're pretty good. And if they join their case, man... I actually want to see how it works to go to the federal court. I want to actually visit the federal court.
I want to get a signature from Rod Simms.
No, legit, guys. I will,
on your butt cheek.
If I can find out if I can go into the session in the federal court when they have this case, I'm going to find out and then take a day off work and drive to Canberra and check it out. If that's where they're hosting it.
Wow.
I think it would be cool. I don't know.
Yeah,
actually,
you could wear a little tag. You could wear a little tag that says you're part of the
media.
The media, yeah. Technically true.
That would be a sight. That would be a sight.
I will legit do it. I'll find out after this where the case is being held. All right, cool. Let's move on to another cheery story. So during the week, there